Hello everyone, I am Prospo, and I welcome you to EDH Scout. Today we will examine the Goblins Tribe card pool for ramp. Every commander deck needs approximately 10 ramp cards. Let's see if the goblins have good and cheeky ways to ramp. Let's start with some statistics. There are a total 26 goblin cards that ramp. 2 cards reach the maximum of 25 flavor points. 12 produce mana, directly or indirectly. 6 reduce the cost of goblin or other spells, and 7 cheat goblins or other creatures into play. The total flavored points are 351 with average 13.5 points. Again, the majority of the ramp spells have red color identity, followed by 2 colorless cards, black, green, grow and Izzet, are last with 1 card each. Let's start the review with a proper mana rock, with 4 flavor points. Victory Chimes is the first ramp card for goblins. Victory Chimes is a 3 CMC artifact. It untaps during each other player's untap step, and it taps to give a player of your choice a colorless mana. Victory Chimes can potentially give you 4 mana in each turn cycle, but you have to be able to use that mana during your opponent's turns. Perfect fit for this card is the Goblin Spellslingers deck. The only printing of this card was in Battleland in 2018. The rulings for this card state: Victory Chimes also untaps as normal during your untap step. The activated ability of Victory Chimes is a mana ability and doesn't use the stack. However, you can't normally activate mana abilities when another player is asked to pay mana. If you'd like to give someone else mana, you must give them mana before they need it. Next on the list, with 4 flavored points, is a treasure producer. This is Pirate's Pillage. Pirate's Pillage is a 4 mana sorcery with red color identity. As an additional cost to cast Pirate's Pillage, you discard a card. You draw 2 cards and create 2 treasure tokens. With this card you are neutral on cards, and you net 2 mana from the treasures. It is a good fit in the Goblin Artificers deck, as the treasures can be used by them extremely efficiently. The only printing of this card was in 2018, in Rivals of Ixalan. Last ramp card, with 4 flavor goblin points, is Call of the Wild. This is a card that cheats into play creatures. Call of the Wild was firstly printed in 1997 in the Weatherlight set. The next printing, with Squee the art by Brom, was in 1999 in Classic 6th edition. Call of the Wild is a 4 mana green enchantment that has the activated ability to cheat a creature from the top of your library onto the battlefield for 4 mana. It is a repeatable effect and can sometimes save you mana. It can be really good with top deck manipulation. Most of the goblins have low CMC though, making this enchantment not very useful in Goblin Tribal decks. Let's move up the flavor list. With 5 flavored points is the powerful mana production, Crackling Ironworks. The members of the Kraklan are using scrap or not so scrap metal for mana. Ironworks is a 4 mana artifact that allows you to sacrifice artifacts for 2 colorless mana each. This effect is so powerful that caused this card to be banned in the modern format, but makes a perfect fit in the Goblin Artificers deck. This card is part of many combos that produce infinite mana. The most notable one is the one that involves the Dockside Extortionist and the Eldrazi Displacer. 2 out of 3 parts of this combo are in this Goblin Tribal ramp list. Let's move on now to the next group of cards that have 6 flavor points. At this level, the cards are goblins that create a boost to other types or mechanics. Goblin Electromancer is a cost reduction goblin for instants and sorceries. Goblin Electromancer is a 2 CMC Goblin Wizard in Izzet colors. It is 2/2 and reduces the cost of instants and sorceries you cast by 1 generic mana. It is a perfect ramp for the Izzet Goblin Spellslingers deck. It was firstly printed in 2012 in the Return to Ravnica and in the dual decks, Izzet vs Golgari. In 2015, received a reprint in the Commander 2015 pre-constructed decks in the new frame. In 2017, received 2 more reprints, one in the Modern Masters set, and one in the dual decks, Might vs. Might. In 2018, received the last printing, in Guilds of Ravnica set. The art by Svetlin Velinov was used in all printings, but in this printing the flavor text was changed. In 2017 it was clarified that 2 Goblin Electromancers will make instant and sorcery spells you cast, cost 2 generic mana less to cast, and so on. And in 2018, added that, to determine the total cost of a spell, start with the mana cost, or alternative cost you're paying. At any cost increases, then apply any cost reductions. The converted mana cost of the spell remains unchanged, no matter what the total cost to cast it was. Goblin Electromancer's effect reduces only generic mana in the spell's total cost. Next on the list, with 6 flavored points, is Ataka's favorite, Dragonlord Servant. It is a 2-mana, red Goblin Shaman, who reduces the cost of the dragon spells you cast by 1 generic mana. It was firstly printed in 2015, in the Dragons of Deki set. He received another art, by Carl Frank, as Ataki Dragon Fury promo card. In 2017 he received 2 more printings, in the Commander product and in Iconic Masters set. Last printing was in 2020, in one of the Dragon's Jumpstart deck. The rulings of this card from 2015 include that Dragonlord Servant can't reduce the colored mana requirement of a dragon spell you cast. If there are any additional costs to cast a dragon spell, apply those before applying Dragonlord Servant and any other cost reductions. The ability can apply to alternative costs to cast a dragon spell. Next on the list, with 6 flavored points, is a cheeky goblin, who steals from giants, but helps them at the same time. This is Stink Drinker Daredevil. Stink Drinker Daredevil is a 3-mana 1/3 goblin rogue that reduces the cost of your giants by 2 generic mana. He is a perfect ramp card for the Tribe of Giants. First printing was in Lorwyn set in 2007. He was reprinted in 2013, in Modern Masters set. Stink Drinker was reprinted twice in Commander products, in 2015 and 2018. Let's move on to cards with 8 flavor points. These cards are goblins that create a benefit from other tribes or mechanics. First of these cards is the powerful Dockside Extortionist. Dockside Extortionist is a 2-mana red Goblin Pirate. He is 1/2 and has the Enter the Battlefield ability to create treasure tokens according to the number of artifacts your opponents control. In a game of Commander, this ability can give you many treasures, making him one of the most powerful red ramp spells in the game. That's why it is so popular in the EDH community. Dockside Extortionist has only been printed once, in one of the Commander 2019 pre-constructed decks. Next on the list with 8 flavored points, is another goblin, which loves nice little treasures. It is Treasure Neighbor. Treasure Neighbor is a 3/2 goblin rogue for 3 mana, that has the ability to steal your opponent's mana rocks for 1 turn, when they use them. This goblin can be very annoying for your opponents, while he helps you ramp. Treasure Neighbor was printed only in 2018, in the Commander 2018 decks. Next on the list with 8 flavored points, is a goblin who likes to sacrifice artifacts. It is Kraklands Toker. Kraklands Toker is a 2/2 goblin shaman. He costs total 3 mana, and he has the activated ability to tap and sacrifice an artifact, to give you 2 red mana. This member of the Kraklan was printed back in 2004, in the Dark Steel set. Last on the list with 8 flavored points is Goblin Clearcutter. Goblin Clearcutter is a 3/3 goblin at 4 mana, that has the activated ability to tap and burn a forest to produce 3 red or green mana. The only printing of Goblin Clearcutter was back in 2003, in Legion set. 17 years later, Togo, the Goblin Weaponsmith, who is mentioned in the flavor text, received his own card. Now let's move up the list. On the 10 flavor point mark, there are cards without the Goblin type, but use goblins to produce a benefit for the player. Let's see. Brightstone Ritual. In this slot is a ritual effect. Brightstone Ritual is an instant spell for only 1 mana that produces red mana equal to the number of goblins on the battlefield. It is a perfect fit for a Goblin Tribal deck that wants some explosive turns, such as the Go Wide Token Goblins decks and the Goblin Spell Slingers deck. Brightstone Ritual was printed in Onslaught set in 2002. Moving on at the 14C flavored points, we have total 4 cards. This level has goblins with an upside. First we will examine Aki Rock Speaker, a mana production goblin. Aki Rock Speaker is a 2 mana red goblin shaman, who gives you 1 red mana back when he enters the battlefield. He was printed in the Champions of Kamigawa set in 2004. In 2011 received the ruling that you get the mana whether you want it or not. If you don't spend it, it will disappear at the end of the current step or phase. Next on the list with 14C flavored points is another mana-producing goblin when ETBs, Stadium Vendors. Stadium Vendors is a 3/3 goblin for 4 mana, who gives you back 2 mana of any color when he enters the battlefield. He gives you the option to give the mana to another player. Stadium Vendors was printed in Battlebond in 2018. Now let's move on to 2 goblins that create treasures. The first is Whily Goblin. Whily Goblin is a 2-drop red Goblin Pirate that creates a treasure when enters the battlefield. He can help you ramp and mana fixes you as well. He has seen some play in the historic Goblin decks. Whily Goblin was printed in 2017 in the Ixalan set. The next goblin on the list that produced treasures is Impulsive Pilferer. Impulsive Pilferer is a 1 mana Goblin Pirate. When he dies he creates a treasure token. This is more effective than the previous goblin if you have a reliable way to kill him. He has an encore ability as well for 4 mana. Later in the game he can produce as many treasures as the number of opponents. The only printing was recently in 2020 in the Commander Legends. Impulsive Pilferer interacts very well with Prospector, another goblin further higher in this list. With these 2 goblins you can play a 4-drop goblin such as Krenko Mob Boss on turn 2. Next on the Goblin Ramp list, with 16 flavored points is Grenzo, the Dungeon Warden. Grenzo, Dungeon Warden is a legendary 2/2 Goblin Rogue. He costs X plus Rakdos colors, and comes into play with X plus 1/+1 counters. He has the activated ability to pay 2 generic mana to put the bottom card of your library in your graveyard. If the card was a creature and his power was less than Grenzo's power, you can put it into play. Grenzo gives you potential card advantage, but you have to boost his power at the start in order to maximize the value from him. He is not that good on ramping, but he can give a lot of value by cheating goblins into play, especially if you have ways to manipulate the bottom of your library. Grenzo was firstly printed in Conspiracy in 2014. Next printing was in Masters 25 in 2018 in the new Magic frame. In 2018 some rules clarifications was posted. Compare Grenzo's power when the ability resolves with the power of the creature card in your graveyard to determine if you put it onto the battlefield. If Grenzo isn't on the battlefield at this time, use its last known power from when it was on the battlefield. If the card you put into your graveyard isn't a creature card or it's a creature card with power greater than Grenzo's power, it stays in your graveyard. Next on the list with 17 flavored points is Shirring Fanatic. Shirring Fanatic is a 2 mana, 2/2 goblin. When he attacks you can choose to reduce the cost of a spell by 1 generic mana. If he manages to survive while attacking, he can be a good ramp for goblins. Making him unblockable will help. He was printed in 2018 in Battlebond. The rulings for this card from 2018 are that effects that reduce the generic mana cost of a spell can't reduce that spell's colored mana requirements. You don't need to choose the name of a card anyone intends to cast this turn. You also don't need to choose the name of a card that can have its cost reduced. For example, some cheering fanatics are enthusiastic about a shock or a mountain. And now we finally reached the 20 flavor points. From now on we will see goblins that care about goblins. Let's kick off with Skirk Prospector. Skirk Prospector is a 1-mana 1/1 goblin that gives you the ability to sacrifice a goblin in order to add 1 red mana to your mana pool. This goblin, except for ramp, is used as a free sacrifice outlet, and he can be part of many goblin combos. The first printing was back in 2002, in the Onslaught set. The same art by Doug Shafi was used in later printings in 2007, in the Dual Decks Elves vs Goblins, and in 2011 in Knights vs Dragons. In 2014 the new frame was used in the Dual Decks Anthology Collector's set. New art by Slimy Maniac was used in the Dominaria set in 2018, and in Mystery Boosters in 2020. Moving up the list with 23 flavored points, we find another member of the Skirk Goblin Tribe. It is Skirk Drill Sergeant. Skirk Drill Sergeant is a 2/1 goblin for 2 mana. When he or another goblin dies, you can pay 3 mana to cheat a goblin into play from the top of your library. It is one of the most inefficient ramp cards for goblins, as you have to flip a goblin of 4 mana or more from the top of your library to have some benefit. He was first printed in 2003, in Legion set. Next 2 printings were in Dual Decks Elves vs Goblins in 2007 and 2014. Next with 23 flavored points is Goblin Lackey. Goblin Lackey is a 1/1 goblin for 1 mana. When he deals damage to a player, you can put a goblin into play from your hand. This goblin can give you a very explosive starts. If you play him on turn 1 and attack to a player without blockers on turn 2, you can cheat massive goblins into play, such as Siege Gang Commander and Muxes. He was first printed in Urza's Saga set back in 1998. Goblin Lackey was reprinted in the premium product, From the Vault Exiled, in 2009 with new art from Christopher Moeller. 10 years later received a printing in the Secret Lair Drop, Explosion Sounds, with art by Mike Uziel. In 2008 there was a clarification of the rules of this card. A goblin permanent card is an artifact, creature, land, and or enchantment card with a creature type goblin. Usually such cards will be creatures in addition to any other types, but they may be dryable instead. For example, you could put Boggart Shenanigans onto the battlefield with this effect. Next with 23 flavored points is Warren Instigator. Warren Instigator is a 1/1 goblin berserker with double strike for 2 mana. He has the same ability to cheat goblins into play from your hand when he deals damage to an opponent, as Goblin Lackey, but he can do it only for creatures. Note that he has double strike, and if he passes an attack unblocked, his ability will trigger twice, giving you the opportunity to put 2 powerful goblins into play. He was first printed in the first Zendika set in 2009. The next printing in 2017 used another art by Svetlin Velinov. Similar to the first art by Andrew Robinson, was the art by Matteo Bassini, which was used in the recent Secret Lair Drop, Zendika Revisited. In 2009 the rulings state that Warren Instigator's ability triggers when it deals any kind of damage to an opponent, not just combat damage. If Warren Instigator attacks an opponent and isn't blocked, its double strike ability will cause it to deal combat damage to that opponent twice, once during each combat damage step. Its triggered ability will thus trigger twice. Warren Instigator deals first strike combat damage, its ability triggers and resolves. It deals regular combat damage, and its ability triggers and resolves again. Next on the list with 23 flavored points is the only goblin that is in the reserve list, Goblin Wizard. Goblin Wizard is a 1/1 Goblin Wizard for 4 mana, that has the ability to tap and put a goblin permanent from your hand into play. It has also the ability for 1 red mana to give target goblin protection from white. As he is at 4 mana, he is not a traditional ramp card, but he can gain you lots of value throughout the game. The only printing was back in 1994 in the Dark set. As he is on the reserve list, his price is not reasonable at all. In 2007 received the ruling that putting the card onto the battlefield is optional. When the ability resolves, you can choose not to. Last on the list with 23 flavored points is Muxes, the Goblin Grandee. Muxes is a 4/4 legendary goblin noble for 6 mana. He has the ability when he enters the battlefield to put all goblin cards from the top 6 cards of your library directly into play. Also when he attacks he gets +1/+1 for each other goblin you control. This powerful goblin is the perfect finisher for the goblin historic decks. In Commander he is very powerful as well, as with his ability you can flood the board with goblins and he can turn on a massive attacking threat. He is more finisher than a ramp spell. He was only printed recently in Jumpstart, in 2020. The rulings for Muxes state that, if a card in a player's library has X in its mana cost, X is considered to be 0, and the bonus Muxes gets is determined only as its last ability resolves. Once that happens, the bonus won't change later in the turn even if the number of goblins you control changes. On the top of our list with 25 flavored points are 2 cards. The first is Frogtosa Banner. Frogtosa Banner is a 2-mana black 1/1 Goblin Rogue. He has haste and reduces the cost of Goblin and Rogue spells by 1 generic mana. He is a very good ramp Goblin, as if you play him in turn 2, you can play a 4-drop Goblin on turn 3. His first printing was in Morningtide, in 2008. 12 years later he received his second printing, in the EDH Commander, Goblins Tribal Pre-Constructed Deck in 2020. The rules clarifications for this card in 2008 are that, a spell you cast that's both creature types costs 1 generic mana less to cast, not 2 generic mana less, and the effect reduces the total cost of the spell, regardless of whether you chose to pay additional or alternative costs. For example, if you cast a rogue spell by paying its prowl cost, Frogtosa Banner it causes that spell to cost 1 generic mana less. And on the top of our list with 25 flavored points is Goblin Warchief. Goblin Warchief is a 2/2 Goblin Warrior, for 3 mana. Gives all your goblins haste and reduces the cost of goblin spells by 1 generic mana. The combination of haste and cost reduction makes him an important piece for some explosive plays. The first printing was in Scourge set, in 2003. The same art by Tim Hildebrandt was used in later printings, in 2006 as FNM promo, in 2007 in Dual Decks Elves vs Goblins, in 2014 in Dual Decks Speed vs Cunning and in Dual Decks Anthology, in 2007 received the Warrior subtype. In 2016 Goblin Warchief was reprinted as a promo card with new art by Muxes. Finally new art by Karl Kopinski was used in the last printings, in 2018 in Dominaria set, and in 2020 in the Mystery Boosters. The rulings of this card from 2018 state that, Goblin Warchief's effect reduces only generic mana in the cost of goblin spells you cast. For example, it doesn't reduce the cost of Prospector below 1 red mana. This is the end of our list. Today we made a deep dive in the card pool of ramp card for the Goblin Tribe. We saw that goblins like to produce mana, reduce the cost of others and cheat other goblins into play. At the top of our list with 25 points, we found 2 cards, Goblin Warchief and Frogtosa Banner. Both of them with their cost reduction ability lead to explosive turns for the Goblin Tribal Deck. The most powerful ramp cards for goblins were Dockside Extortionist followed by the Cheeky Treasure Neighbor. And the most flavorful art is this one by Doug Shafi, used on the first printings of Prospector. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share and subscribe to the channel. See you soon with more tribal flavorful videos.